And welcome to a new episode of League of DFS. My name is Chris Chung, Primetime on Twitter, and tonight I am having one of my best returning guests. You've used to know him as Mr. Mosby on Twitter, as his avatar was. You used to know him as 99 Problems. You can still find his work on Action Network listed under that name, John. You probably need to ask them to change that. But he is returning to the 2019 split season as the esports plug. How are you doing today?
Hey man, not too bad. How about you, Prime?
Doing well, just adjusting to life. That's also adjusting to 2019 means adjusting to this new format that's really been a learning curve for me. So, how about for you? How has the 2019 season treated you?
Ooh, it's been a wild season, man. I've had some of my best and worst weeks of all time this season. It's been up and down, not like as consistent as some of the other seasons.
And I can absolutely relate to that. It's been just a crazy wild ride, and this grows across all regions. Typically, I have a good read on one region or another, but I just haven't found a consistency yet, and I don't know if it's something that I'm doing or just teams just don't have this flow, they have this way of consistently winning. We see the top teams falling. We see teams that are typically supposed to be stronger just absolutely get demolished by middling teams or teams that comes from a combination of no names. And I'm referring to last night when Rogue Warriors, who was supposed to be a team all of developmental players, save for Killua, just demolished Suning and my bankroll at the same time.
Yeah, I've actually kind of liked Rogue Warriors this season more than some other people. I've been on them in DFS a few times when they were big underdogs this season, but not last night. I was not considering playing the Rogue Warriors last night.
Yeah, I think you and I and a couple of people that I've spoken to in the preseason, we have Sunning really high. I mean, that team consists of really good talent, but for them to, the first game was a crusher, and then the second game they just threw 4 towers up, 3 dragons, and you still lose.
Yeah, and it's even weirder because I thought that this meta game would be better for them, having players that they got from the LMS. Like the LMS, they were the most aggressive team in the LMS, but the LMS was still kind of a slower region than China. So I thought if we got a meta game that was 80 carry centric with more tanks, that would benefit Maple.
Yeah.
And Sword Art, but no luck so far.
I mean, I also guess that's why they're pros and they all aim to improve. Rogue Warrior just got the best of Sunning. But we are here not to talk about the Asian regions. That's fun and all, but our focus for tonight, LEC, LCS. Well then, starting from the beginning, we had high hopes for a certain team, we had low hopes for others, but we see a whole shift, at least for the European counterpart. What has been some of the major changes for you in terms of your preseason expectations versus now? Let's start with the LEC.
The LEC actually, it was one of the regions where I've really called it well. I got called out a lot in the early part of the season for saying that I thought Misfits was pretty terrible.
Oh my god.
And then they came out and just stomped everybody week one, and oh man, my mentions on Twitter that week. But since then, that started to normalize. The one thing that I was so wrong about at EU was Fnatic. I really did not see Fnatic tanking like this. Like, if you told me that G2 was crushing them and they were second in the league, that wouldn't have surprised me at all. Or if you said that one other team had passed them and they were sitting in third, I would have bought that. But to see them the way that they're sitting right now, I mean, 3-7, losing to just like everybody feels like they can beat Fnatic, and I never in a million years thought that Caps was going to be this big of a deal. Yeah. I knew that losing Caps was going to hurt them, but I thought maybe that drops them a spot or two in the rankings, not down to out of playoff contention at the moment.
Absolutely, and I would feel the same way. I thought they still have their core. Weepo, Broxa, Reckless, Hillisang. Nemesis just needs a growing curve, but for them to lose against other teams that just came together, I'm talking SK. They lost to the other team that did they lose to Origen? I'm not even sure, but they are not looking dominant even in their wins, and that's concerning.
And honestly, Bwipo, it seems to me, has like almost Huni syndrome, where last season I was so impressed with Bwipo whenever he got to play. I was like, man, this guy is a crusher. I was saying all last season, like, they need to get rid of Soaz. They need to play Bwipo all the time. But this season, he just comes back and he's just been pretty bad.
Yeah.
Kind of very, very similar to Hooney in NA. You just look at that guy and you're like, man, this guy's such a carry. And then it seems like something's with those guys that try to carry from the top lane when the meta's not with them or when the matchups aren't with them. They still just try to fight too much and overextend too much, except now they're not on a pick that's strong enough to handle that, and they just start feeding.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The over-aggressiveness might be the downfall, and this is, you're right, it's not just Hooney, it's not just Bwipo. I see it a couple of top laners that do that as well for in other regions. But one good call that you have, I know for sure, is SK, and now they're showing it. It took a while, and they're coming together. And hopefully they'll have a better second half because they started off hot. They got 2 wins against Fnatic. They got their 3rd win just this past weekend. That game just they had to repeat. But that was week 1, and now they had a very big lull. They kept losing to all these teams, the middling teams, and then right before last week they are on a winning streak, if I'm not mistaken. How do you feel about them going forward?
Well, I thought I was pretty high on SK coming in. My general theory for that is it's hard to tell how good a team is going to be when they haven't been, when they're coming from like a challenger type league or from another league like that. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, in like promotion relegation tournaments, the teams that are coming up from challenger tend to be on the level at least of the bottom LCS teams. Mm-hmm. And they were a very, very good alternate region team when they were on Mad Lions, the 3 guys that were from Mad Lions. And then they pick up Pyrian, who's obviously was SKT's backup to Faker and got play in Korea. You had to expect, decent stuff from him. So the team just seemed like they were going to be good to me. One of my biggest bets this offseason was for them to make the playoffs. And at the moment, that bet looks pretty good. So, I had reasonable expectations for them, and I think they're doing about what I expected them to do.
Mm-hmm. They're sitting at 5-5 right now with still games to come against XL, games against Rogue, Misfit, and they have a chance to just be that 3rd or 4th seed, maybe. Yeah, and get into the playoffs. Now, the team that we did talk about, the Misfit, where you get a lot of crap in the early season, now rears its ugly head. I've even made the same type of call on Zhang pod that Misfit is gonna be overrated. First 3 games, it just looks like I was dead wrong, and I was ready to go back as I'm gonna retract my statement, and then bam, they not lose to good teams. They lost to Rogue. They gave Rogue their first win. What is happening with this team? It's not like any of their players changed, but their style? Is it mental breakdown? What is it?
So I meme a lot on the Misfits on Twitter and stuff, but really, what I really think about them is that Fabivin is not a terrible player. Soaz is not a terrible player. These guys are fine players. The problem is a mentality thing, and this is something that I noticed in my career in other esports and when I played poker. One of the worst kind of people is somebody who used to be really good and is now just fine, because you can't convince those people that they're not really good anymore. And so when you take a team that's got Fabivin and Soaz, and even Gorilla, I think, has been pretty good, but you could even throw Gorilla into the mix because he's from another region and likes to play a different style of league. When you get those kind of guys together, it felt the same to me as the Misfits last season, where as soon as something started going wrong, you were going to have a bunch of guys, even after their last loss, Soaz on Twitter was like, I need to start taking carry champions and carry these guys. And then he kind of stepped back a little bit and said no, I mean, my team's good, but you can tell they're frustrated because they think they're still elite players and they're not really willing to accept that they're just average players now. And so that when you start getting that kind of problems with the members of the team, you're always going to see it sink down. And that's kind of what I'd always predicted.
Right. So it sounds like a typical athlete who is on the downtrend of his career, still wanting to prove to the world that they're good, but the younger players are catching up. This meta is really, really favoring those who fit this new style. Lane Kingdom, being able to just take on their lane and being aggressive, more aggressive than they used to be. And we see that the old style, the controlled and conservative style, has fallen to the wayside. I'm not saying it's completely ineffective, because some teams are still able to use it well, and one of them is definitely Splice. But you can also tell that Splice is not a top team. They are a good team, but that speaks to the need to adapt and longevity for these pro esports athletes may be needing to adapt quick and fast. So in talking about that, let's do a little review of what happened in the LEC last week. We can start with day one. We can start with day two. Is there any particular game that you want to highlight? And then I'll also pick a game to talk about.
Well, I mean, there's a few different ones that stood out to me as surprise results that were very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's pretty tough not to target Origin and G2. I mean, G2 losing their first game and losing it to Origin, who during periods of this split so far have just looked pretty awful.
Mm-hmm.
And they're making a little bit of a comeback now. Origin is the opposite of Misfits as far as their, like, what I would expect from them. They have a bunch of guys who are fine not being superstars, and they also have an incredible coaching staff. And so they were a team that was the opposite for me. I kind of expected Origin to not be very good early on. I knew they didn't have the highest talent level in their roster, but the fact that I knew that their coaching could bring them some number of wins automatically throughout the season. But to see them beat G2 and be the first team to beat G2 was very surprising to me, and might be a little bit of a wake-up call to G2 that they can't just do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I think I wouldn't expect this to be something that caught like a weakness that G2 has shown, that now they're going to start losing games. I think it's just a bit of a wake-up call, and they'll just come back and start crushing everybody again. But that was definitely interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It was a surprise to basically anyone. That's not to take anything away from Origin, because they are coming together. They're formulating some things. You can see some better coaching on their part, but to beat G2 and to beat them in a fashion where G2 did not have a chance the whole game, that was, even there was another game earlier in the season where G2 fell behind so far, but because of caps, they can come back. So you kind of felt that G2 could come back from anything. This game did not feel that way.
No, I agree. This was a very dominant beatdown, and yeah, like I say, I think that'll be a wake up call to G2. I don't think their composition was that great that game. I think they were continuing, as they had been the last couple of weeks, to just pick really weird stuff and just have fun, basically, because they seem like guys that like to just go out there and have some fun.
Yeah.
But this will be a little bit of a wake up call to them. I think they should stick a little bit more to what's going on in the meta and make sure that they're securing these wins against teams like Origin.
Absolutely. And then when we get to the preview segment, I will talk a little bit about the DFS slant for that. One game that did stand out to me was Schalke's loss to Vitality. Schalke has been really frustrating for me. I picked them to win and they lose. I picked them to lose and they win. And this carried over from last year. And it's still going. Now, losing to Vitality is nothing to sneeze at, but the way that they play, you would feel like they were more of a sounder team. What went wrong, if you can remember of anything from that game?
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that front. I expected Schalke to win. I had Schalke in my lineups. One thing that's a little bit interesting to me, and I noticed this a little bit playing some League of Legends recently too, I think there's a little bit of overvaluing on the Sivir as of recently. I don't really like to see my team pick Sivir at the moment. I really think there's champions that are stronger late game and stronger in lane than Sivir. And so, should be kind of safe. I wasn't thrilled to see that pick up from Upset. It's not really a champion that fits his style in my world. And he does end up getting pretty heavily outfarmed by Attila, who's on the Kaisa, who is one of those champions that I think is both a better laner and a better late game champion. Jizuke is just better than Abbedagge, so that worked out well for them. They managed to take advantage of that a lot. But I really thought going into this game that Schalke was going to win. So that was surprising for me as well. Vitality's always one of those teams, though, that can beat anybody in the league and can lose to anybody in the league on any given day. So
yeah, that just proved that that past week, I had Vitality winning against SK and they lost. So next game against Schalke, of course they're going to win, right? They're playing against, they're going to lose. Or in Vitality's case, they might just be the team that That reminds me too much of the old CLG. Win in any game, lose in any game. So
It's
yeah, go
it's
ahead.
a bit of a side, like a bit of a side tangent, but I think one of the things that's really messing up a lot of people, including me, some weekends this split, is that the leagues in general have just gotten better for the most part to the point where the teams are much more scrunched together than they used to be.
Yes.
And so the upset potential for games has gone up, I think, especially in China, in North America, and in Europe. I think Korea is still a little bit more
There's
tiered,
more to. Mhm.
but it definitely feels to me like in Europe, any team except for Rogue feels live to win just about any game. Like XL is definitely worse than most other teams,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're counted out against pretty much anybody else in the league. And it feels the same in North America that pretty much any team can pick up a win against anybody. Pretty much the same in China with IG losing some games recently. So I think that the competition level is just crunching in a little bit and making it tougher for there to be easy outcomes to predict.
Absolutely, that's a great point for you to bring up. And I know you are heavy on the sports betting scene. Do you see that similar type of results from opening odds to results being dissimilar to what people expect?
Yeah, I mean, the odds in a lot of the leagues definitely seem way too high. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but I want to say just off the top of my head that in most of these leagues, if you had just bet the underdog every game, you probably would be up money right now. Because not because the underdog is winning more than they're losing, but because the odds are so heavily against them.
Hmm.
Because they're used to better teams just crushing worse teams most of the time.
Yeah.
So they still have odds like, plus 350 or plus 400 for a team like XL sometimes.
Hmm.
And so with the teams crunching together, yeah, there's been a lot of value in underdogs this season, more so than previous seasons, I would say.
Yeah, and especially if some of these teams carry a reputation or a name value. If you bet against Fnatic all throughout the half of the split, I think you'll be up in
Oh,
money.
you'd be rolling in money if you were betting against Fnatic every game for sure.
All right, so let's see if Fnatic will stop the bleeding or not. It doesn't look too hopeful. We're looking into day 1 of week 6. We have Schalke G2 round 2. Pretty much every team will be round 2 against their opponents, so they're familiar. XL against Rogue, Vitality against Splice, SK against Misfit, Fanatics against Origin. Which game catches your eye immediately when it comes to a DFS approach?
Very interested. Well, from DFS, I'd have to look at the lineups again. The matchup I'm definitely most interested in to watch is SK against Misfits, because Misfits completely crushed SK the first time they played. But now, with more time for the teams to have adapted a little bit better and for SK to have watched some of Misfits games, I'm very interested to see if they'll be able to turn that around this next time, because they've looked the better team recently. But they looked pretty terrible against Misfits last time. So definitely interested to see how that goes.
Oh, absolutely. That is a game I have circled on, both from a fan standpoint and from a DFS standpoint, because I'm not sure yet. The odds have not been released, but I would imagine that the game would be closer, so the salaries will be lightly tiered close. The other game that I might be more interested is the Fanatics against Origin. Now, does it stop the bleeding, or is Origin on a positive trend where Fanatics, this can be a wash of a split for them? They don't have a chance.
Man, that is another game that's really tough to call, because I think that Origin has slightly overperformed lately, and I still think Fnatic is slightly underperforming their skill level. I think those teams at the moment are pretty darn close. I'd say for me, if either one of those teams is a even slightly heavy underdog, I would probably bet them no matter which one it is. If either one of the teams is even like plus 130, I'd probably just bet them right away, just because I think that matchup is so close. In DFS, if you were looking for DFS matchups for that week, I haven't run the stats for that slate, but almost for sure Schalke G2 and Misfits SK will be the two highest scoring ones, just from looking at them real quick.
Yeah, and anything can change, of course. Once the salaries are released, it'll give us a better idea where we might want to target. But for sure, I think the XL game is the one that I'm likely paying the least attention to just because of the style that XL plays. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so let's head to day 2. Saturday, we have Vitality against Fanatics. Oh my gosh, I really am seeing an O2 week again for them. Splice against Rogue, G2 against XL, SK against Schalke, and Origin against Misfit. Who, likely Misfit going O2, I would think.
Yeah, that's another one I'm interested in too. I'd like that Origin versus Misfits is the one that sticks out to me that day as being kind of interesting to see if Misfits can find some footing again. Splice versus Rogue, not too exciting. I think Vitality is probably good enough that they should beat Fnatic with how Fnatic's playing. It's hard to ever predict against G2. And then SK and Schalke. I think Schalke is clearly a better team, even though I think SK is a good team. So I think the most interesting one for sure is Misfits against Origin.
Yeah, and good for them to put it as the last game of the day because that'll be the game of the day for us. Good. So this is what we have to look forward to. Once the salaries are released, guys, you'll find out as soon as I post the second part of this show. So from Europe, let's head to the games that we actually can wake up and watch and have a, decent breakfast before getting into the games. But before we head into this slate, let's do a little review of what happened in the LCS last week. So, any global thoughts about day 1 or day 2 on the LCS for you?
Oh, similar to the LEC, there's some teams that I'm still like holding very firm positions on that aren't performing at the level of the position that I have on them. Like, I swear Echo Fox is awful. I swear they're awful, man. I look at their lineup and I'm like, this team should never win a game. And every week on Sunday, I have Echo Fox's opponent every time. And it's just like, I could never lose this in my mind. And then somehow they just come out there and they're just like, what if we just drafted 5 Teemos and then Echo Fox just crushes them and I cannot figure it out. So yes, Echo Fox has been a large bother to me. TSM I've been pretty right on. I've been happy about that. And I'm super excited that my boys FlyQuest are overperforming what people thought about them. I'm super excited to see Pobelter showing that he's not just like an Oriana Malzahar bot like he was on Team Liquid. This guy can actually come out and play and stomp lanes if he needs to. So definitely some really cool things happening there. I'm very worried for Optic. I was a little bit excited for Optic earlier in the season because Crown was playing so well, but the rest of their roster is just not playing well enough. I'd be real surprised if Crown re-signs with Optic at any point.
That's another tough offseason for Optic to kind of consider. And definitely Echo Fox was a major surprise. Even Tim Svenhausen, the guy who was in charge of Oracle Elixir, was like, this is the team that overperforms statistically. And the other narrative that we never figured out that came into play just this past week that I learned about, Rush never goes 0-2. So we have
that's the thing that tilts me because I knew when I bet against Echo Fox on day 2 and they lost, I knew people were going to come at me and be like, bro, Rush never loses 2-0 a week. Like, shut up.
There's no statistical basis for any of this. It's just all narrative and it's playing out, and
it's voodoo magic is what it is. Rush is using some sort of voodoo magic to get people to draft Jace, Olaf, Ashe comps against them every week. I don't understand it. It's magic.
Yeah. The other team that we are highly disappointed in, I'm sure you'll agree, is the 100 Thieves. Very talented. I'm figuring out every region has one of these teams where we were very high on, and they are just at the bottom of their tier right now, or the rankings right now. And 100 Thieves just proves to themselves that they can't draft for crap. They just can't.
The 100 Thieves, what a fall from grace for the 100 Thieves, because when I was betting in the preseason, I did a video on my bets for the preseason, and I said one of the best ways to make money is to fade one of the favorites and bet the other two in the futures market. And I faded the 100 Thieves but I was worried when I was fading them. I was like, man, like this team, I know I'm going to be so mad when they come in and beat Liquid and I have all this money on Liquid, and they're going to come in and beat them. I'm going to be so mad. I was sweating it, and then after watching them play for a little while, the sweat's gone. We're all right. 100 Thieves. And I can't even really tell you, other than drafting, like you're talking about, like what's going wrong. Like it really feels like they just need to draft better because Bang has looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Someday is just a great player.
Mm-hmm.
Afromu, I think, has fallen off a bit
Yes.
from his previous days, but I think he's still an above average support.
Mm.
And Hui got a lot of crap in week 1 for some pretty big mistakes, but other than that, has been a pretty good player. So I feel like if they just drafted comps that allow them to win, then they'd be all right. But you can't just go into the game and just take whoever you feel like and have a shot.
Yeah, and I definitely see that Bang and Someday were solid throughout, but the whole team is dragging them down. I don't think Anda is anything special, and that might be an issue as well. But Afro is trying too hard. For
I
being
agree
is he still the shot caller? I hear that Hui has taken over the shot calling duties.
I haven't heard anything officially about who's doing the shot calling for them, but it does feel to me like Afro has lost a little bit because the team's cohesion doesn't feel the same as it felt before.
Yeah.
But I do think that he's trying a little bit too hard, kind of a la Fabibin and Soaz, like I was talking about, of trying to be the big playmaker, even in situations where maybe that doesn't necessarily make sense.
Yeah. And this will have to give credit to my buddy Calvin, our buddy Calvin. He's been on this Afro hate for the longest time. I did not want to admit it, but after watching the game, it's clear that he's not playing to his best of the ability, and it's affecting the team as a whole. All the other teams seems to kind of fall into place. We're seeing a bit of resurgence with Golden Guardians. They came in the seasons with a little bit of hype. Took a while, but now they're on this good streak. Of course, losing the TL is nothing to be ashamed of, but they're bouncing back well and playing other teams well. What do you think are their the forecasts for Golden Guardians?
Yeah, I like Golden Guardians to do a little bit better than they are right now, move up just slightly from where they are.
Mm-hmm.
The only question is, with the Guardians, kind of similar again to the Misfits, is I wonder if they are able to win without the strategy that's been successful for them, which is just putting Froggen on super late game mages and just holding off and letting it get to the point where he can carry. I do wonder if they can win with him. If the metagame switches towards like assassins in the mid lane, I'm not sure that they can compete, because it seems like he's doing a lot of the heavy lifting by playing the Karthus and the Anivia and champions like that. So I don't know what happens to them if he can't play those anymore. We'll have to see. But I have hopes that they'll move up a little bit from where they are right now.
And that's a good point. I think Froggen is one of those old veterans, maybe still relying a little bit on name value. I'm not sure. But let's look ahead into week 5. So then the first day we will have teams playing against other teams that they haven't played before. But then day 2 is when they restart their whole schedule again, where they'll be facing the other teams for the second time. So let's look into day 1. TL against Echo Fox, I think that one stands out to me as immediately I know where I'm going.
Man, Echo Fox will probably win. Echo Fox will probably win. Just don't bet that game. You never know when Rush is going to do the voodoo magic. Don't do it.
Okay. And I'll be shocked, but that stranger things have happened. The other game that I'm looking at is FlyQuest against C9. This is the battle of top tiers. I know the edge is given to C9, but I'm really proud and really happy about where FlyQuest stands. And if you haven't had the chance, look into Wild Turtle's video with Travis Gafford, and he talks a little bit about the FlyQuest slow start and how they are thinking of fixing the issue. But this is a game I'm likely not sure where I'm going for DFS. Maybe a lot of people already picked the C9 because they know that C9 is high kills, but FlyQuest can actually limit deaths and kills.
And they're right as well that FlyQuest, what's going on with them is very similar to SK and the LEC, is that talent-wise, they're not above some of these other teams, but they just play really well together. They have a good stylistic synergy, and that can go a long way, especially when you're playing some teams like Clutch Gaming being a good example that is the opposite, like that has a good amount of talent on the roster, but is playing a totally disconnected style where they're not working together. So if FlyQuest keeps throwing out pretty good drafts and playing together, I think they can beat pretty much anybody except for Liquid on any given day. And they had a good start
They
against
did.
Liquid too.
They
So
did. Yeah, that was a pretty good game, and I was really I was wondering if that's maybe the beginning of the or the beginning of seeing how teams will figure Team Liquid out. They didn't quite win that game, but it certainly gives a blueprint of how you to approach Team Liquid, and FlyQuest has that ability. The other game I want to quickly touch on: Battle of the Bottom, Optics against 100. Uh, Loser completely out of the playoff conversation, yes or no?
yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think my thought is that Optic is never making the playoffs no matter what. 100 Thieves, if they start drafting better, I could see them going on a run of 5 or 6 games and finding themselves in the playoffs. It'll be a little tough if they lose this one to Optic, but I don't really. I would say before this match even starts, Optic is basically out of playoff contention.
Mm-hmm.
100 Thieves has some shot.
Mm-hmm. So if 100 Thieves loses, you are completely safe with your futures bet, right?
Yeah, I would say I have Cloud9 and Team Liquid futures. So at this point, North America pretty much feels locked up to me. I
Sweet.
don't think I'm losing money in North America.
Sweet. That's good to hear. One final game to talk about is TSM against CLG. Notably, they are one of the older franchises of LCS, but also because it's a fun narrative of Ziggs playing against his old team, the coach of TSM. Any thoughts on how this game will lean? I've had the hardest time figuring out when CLG will win or lose and when TSM will perform or not.
So I think CLG is a better team, which is an unpopular opinion, I think. But the thing for me in this matchup in particular is that Broken Blade has extremely high highs and extremely low lows so far as his performance. And Darshan is clearly CLG's weakness, especially if you ban out a couple of those tank champions that he prefers. So I think the way this game goes, if I'm the coach of CLG, I'm going to camp Broken Blade and help Darshan because I think that's what's going to decide it. I don't think there's a huge advantage in the bottom lane for either team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a huge advantage for Bjergsen against Power of Evil anymore. I think that's a fairly fair lane at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I would give CLG the advantage in the jungle and TSM the advantage in the top lane, although Broken Blade is kind of variant. So if they send Wiggly up to the top lane to go help out Darshan, I think I would take CLG in that matchup. I think they're better than people are giving them, and I think TSM is a little bit worse than people want to admit.
And now I'm kind of understanding why this is the last game of the day, because its storyline isn't good. The game can be close. I feel like both teams can be evenly matched, but yeah, I think this is an exciting game to watch as from a fan perspective. So looking into day 2 quickly, these are the teams that are going to play their opponents again. First off, if Fox wins against TL, you can guarantee that they'll lose in the second day. Maybe they'll keep it that they'll have to keep up that trend of 1-1. Just we throw out any statistic, just go with narrative. Don't do that, guys. Play wisely, play with stats. We have enough data to support where we make our choices now. TL against 100 Thieves. Oh my gosh, if 100 loses this one, and pretty much they are projected to lose, I don't know what they're gonna do. They might just flat out give up for the rest of this split. FlyQuest against TSM is one that stands out to me as a fun game to watch. And anything that stands out to you in day 2?
Yeah, I think that Golden Guardians Fox matchup for me is going to be cool because I just really want Golden Guardians to just stomp Echo Fox. My second biggest future of the offseason was Echo Fox to come bottom 3, and I could not have been more confident in that. And it's still just how is it not happening? Echo Fox should be 0-6, and when they get stomped by the Golden Guardians on Sunday, then all the narratives will die. Echo Fox will lose their soul and heart and fall to the bottom of the standings.
Well, either get that or you get a lot of memes on your Twitter.
Yeah, pretty much. That's how it goes.
That's the price you pay for being so good at your job, John. So I think we're having a good kind of read on the LCS. And I say that tentatively because this year, this split, the LCS has been a circus clown fiesta. But we're confident in a certain teams and how they'll play out for the rest of the games. So thank you for joining me and kind of helping us break down the games, kind of looking into what some of the expectations are and how we can see how this day will play out. So with this last moment, why don't you tell people where they can find your work, what you have upcoming in store, and how they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest way to get in touch with me is on Twitter at the Esports Plug. I do some videos on YouTube every week. I have a couple series that I run every week, and just if you're trying to get a little bit better at esports DFS and sports betting, I think they're just really good content. I don't really hold anything back. Just did a video where I pretty much revealed my DFS lineup for tonight. I mean, I'm pretty much willing to give away the information, so I hope people come over and take some interest in that.
Absolutely. And guys, just go and watch the videos. You'll learn so much more. And he's giving out lineups. I don't give out any Asian regions lineup. It's just not my thing. I don't want to bring people down with me, but fairly confident in the LEC and LCS. Thank you everyone for joining us. Stay tuned for the next segment where once the salaries are out, I can break them down for you. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
And welcome back, guys. It is time to break down the salaries, break down this weekend, what we have looking forward to. I'd like to thank John again for just hanging out with me and going through the games, telling us how we can do better, what do we look forward to. So without further ado, let's just dive into the weekend and look in the salaries of the day one of the LEC and the LCS. So looking at here, we have Rengar to help us cut through the BS. And looking at the salary, the first thing that stands out to me is Oregon against Fanatics. And finally, maybe Vegas has caught up. Maybe DraftKings has finally caught up as well, that Fanatics is just not good. But in a tournament type of thinking, can they be good? Can they actually do well? Maybe this is an upset that's a potential to happen. When I'm talking tournaments, of course, my typical main focus is cash, but I do want to point that out because that caught my eye and just makes me think in that direction. Maybe Fanatics is still trash and you should just go Origin. The one thing I'll say that G2 might typically should provide you with a higher floor, and they're only priced at 5,800 tiered on a team, so it's easy to sort of mix them in with another favorite. It's doable because of that salary, how it's pointed out. But I am not a fan of the matchup overall. Schalke is not a team that I particularly enjoy playing against, and G2 is I don't know. It's hard to say, but for the sake of safety, cash safety, I think you might have to at least play Mickey X, at least play Caps in your cash lineup, and you can figure out who you want for your third one. The other game that is likely to be where my cash game is going is Vitality. This is not a meta that I think it's suitable for Splice, who continues to try to play their own style, but ADC is back, and if Vitality can get a fast start with their bot lane and kind of neutralize Mowgli, which Mowgli is on Vitality. If they can neutralize Xerxes, there is a great chance that Vitality just snowball this game and just light them up. Splice has definitely not been a team that limits deaths, not this split, not this season. So that's another cash consideration. Misfit against SK, there is definitely a potential, and I think SK can be a popular underdog stack, and it's heavy in my cash consideration because you can easily pair them together with G2, you can easily pair them together with OG, you can easily pair them with Vitality, and until Misfits solve their issues, I think they're still overrated, and this is a prime opportunity. Again, a prime opportunity, even for cash, to go SK. You want Crown Shot, you want Self-Made, You want Werlib. Yes, even Werlib. Werlib had a slow start, but I've noted his stats has improved over the last few weeks, and he's been way more involved. So that's kind of where I'm looking at right now for cash. It's G2, its vitality is SK. So, noting that, let us sort of shift over to the second one. Let us look into LCS, the North American great region of the North American LCS, where every clown fiesta is living. And looking at the salary distribution, it is no surprise that Team Liquid is priced as the highest, and they're priced at 6,200, which means it'll be very, very difficult to have a clean stack with them and a favorite. Not that it's impossible, but it's likely that you're considering a support at captain, which is not a big deal if you're going for cash. But I'm starting with Team Liquid. Team Liquid will be the foundation. You want double lift. You want maybe core JJ. And if you have the cap or salary cap, it might be either Jensen or you can go Xsmithy. Either one works for me. So that's where my stack, where my cash game is going to start. TSM and CLG is actually more of a coin flip game than what the salary is priced. So this is a prime opportunity for you to think about, if you could think about using CLG for your tournament. But the other game, of course, that you can consider, it's safe, but honestly, it's Fly and C9 should be close as well. And this is where it concerns me about Fly. Fly has been able to limit deaths. They play a slower type of approach, more methodical, trying to win through macro, which could lower some of C9's potential, but C9's has been a hyperactive type of team, and if you expect C9 to win, I think you're looking at maybe 12 to 14 times of kills, with upside for more, of course, but you're also looking at a lower floors. They are a cash play. I wouldn't call them exactly a safe cash, and it's definitely not possible to stack TL with C9 cleanly. You might want to just have a few one-offs for that. I have no real interest in cash for 100 Thieves at this point. Can be a conversations for tournament because of how cheaply they're priced and should be a game that is winnable, but knowing 100 Thieves, it's hard to say, especially with a poor draft and on not knowing when they'll lose and when they'll win. Golden Guardians will be another strong cash consideration for me. I think winner of this game will probably give you a good stack with Team Liquid. But if you can go Golden Guardians, Team Liquid, that might be the way to go for me in thinking of cash. Golden Guardian is just, bouncing back well. And Clutch Gaming can give up a certain amount of kills and deaths. They are a boom-bust team, so don't be surprised if Clutch Gaming win. Right now, I just expect Golden Guardians to be the better team and Team Liquid to be the absolute floor cash game that you want. So those are my thoughts of this weekend. There's certainly a lot of opportunities for tournament build, and that would make for a great split to play, because that means ownership will be a little bit more spread than usual. So I'm hoping just to put my best lineup forward instead of thinking about ownership too much. You still have to consider it, but it's not that much. I'll throw in most of my cash lineups in any types of tournament contest. Hope that helps, guys. Look me up look forward to the Saturday stream where I review Friday and then talk about the Saturday slate. It'll be on Twitch TV /FF Dynasty 101. If you have any questions, hit me up at primetime on Twitter. If I don't take down the GPP this weekend, I hope that you will.